So, you're watching Partnering to Transform Food Systems Globally. It's a GAFSP Replenishment Fund event. And now we're going to live the title. We can't just have the title without living the title. I want to introduce you to our panel speakers. Ibrahima, make yourself known. I'm going to throw them all up so you can see this think tank of knowledge we have. Gilbert, Claudia, Agnes, and they're all going to do their own introductions, so their introductions will be fabulous. This is a good point. If you don't speak fluent French, this is a good point in which to actually activate your interpretation, because Ibrahima is going to be speaking to us in French, and I'm going to get all of our guests to actually introduce themselves. Ibrahima, welcome. Tell everybody who you are. Why are you important in this conversation?
Merci.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Ibrahima. As was announced, I am a farmer in Mali, president of different farmer organizations. And I'm heading this network throughout West Africa. I participate in these discussions, be it pertaining to food at different levels in rural areas. So I also a part of the board of directors. The sound is imperfect, says the interpreter. It's sort of wafts in and out a little bit at times.
You battling with the sound. It is a live event, so that's one of our challenges. Thank you for that splendid introduction. Gilbert, really good to see you. How would you like to introduce yourself on this occasion, in this event, talking about food systems and collaboration?
Thank you so much, Femi. My name is Gilbert Hongo. I'm the president of the International Fund for Agriculture and Development. We are in the development business, we are in agriculture business, and we are in smallholder business. So you can imagine the great interest that I have in being here today. And congratulations to this successful launch of GAFSP Replenishment. Over to you, Femi.
Thank you very much. That is the true spirit of collaboration there, because Gilbert, he could be seen as another organization that is grappling for the funds, and he's now saying congratulations on GAFSP launching their replenishment campaign. So that is great. That's the spirit of collaboration right there. Let me say hello to Claudia. Claudia has an amazing resume. Claudia, what are you going to pick from your resume to stun our audience with? What is going to be relevant for today's conversation? Welcome.
Thank you, Femi. It's such a pleasure to be with everyone today. I'm currently the Managing Director for Research, Delivery, and Impact of the CGIR, and it's marvelous to be part of a partnership discussion because for those of you who may not be familiar with the CGIR, we are the world's largest global agricultural research and innovation network. We've been active for over 50 years now and have a global presence today of over 10,000 people in 70 different countries. We're a network and a partnership even within the CGIR, and a partnership that has been working directly with national agricultural research institutions, farmer groups, NGOs, academia, global institutions in the field, working for small-scale farmers for many, many years now. So delighted to be here with such a like-minded group working so hard for food security and poverty alleviation. Thank you.
You're so welcome. One more panelist to get her to introduce herself, because her resume is, like all of our panel, this wide. So I said, how do you want to talk to our audience today? What do you want to share with them about you that makes you so critical to the conversation? Agnes, what did you work out? Go ahead, welcome.
Thank you, Femi, for that introduction. I come here today in two capacities. I work with smallholder farmer like Gilbert. I love that job. I believe, like was said earlier, that it's actually possible to get people out of poverty. And I have worked with the GAFSP in this capacity. And I believe that in addition to funds, probably the most other important thing is partnerships. So that's the one hat. The other hat is my role as special envoy, and how, as we go into the Food System Summit, we need to discuss and think through the type of partnerships we need to deliver, all the SDGs that we need to deliver against. So in each case, when I'm going to speak, I'll tell you which hat I'm wearing.
All right, thank you. Very organized there. I can see you, panel, out of the side of my eye. I can see all of you there, all sitting there, standing by on the Zoom. So when you have something to say, if you're not jumping in, I will just watch your body language and bring you in anyway. This idea, and also audience, I see you too. I see your comments. Drop them into the Q&A section and they will come right back here into the GAFSP Replenishment Studio. All right, so this is the first thought here about multi-stakeholder partnerships. The assumption, we come to this conversation assuming that they're a good idea and that they help with something as bold as SDG 2. Gilbert, you start. Is that assumption right, that they are very helpful in terms of creating a journey and a mission?
You're on mute, Gilbert. You're on mute.
Thank you so much. Greeting to all of you, and thank you for having us here today, Femi. I have been very fascinated from the when I was going through the document before this session, and also by watching the presentation, and quite frankly, starting from the introductory remark made by Minister Muller, and the presentation from Ceres. Is very crucial for us to keep in mind that doubling our impact, doubling what we are doing between now and 2030 is the only way for us to get close for achieving the SDG 2. And to do that, we know the gap is so big. We talk about 33 billion a year additional financing. So that gap is so big that we can only do it by doing the partnership. So the point for me, not only is the partnership at a different level, just like we also saw from the partnership presentation, you have to look at that from the producers level, at the smallholders, the farmer organization, partnership also between government or within government at the regional level. I believe your point was making that instead of being in a competition, you have to be in a collaboration. I believe that's a very powerful statement. But also partnership with development actors like us, like GAFSP, like the World Bank, like AGRA, and others. So, and that partnership is certainly not a competition because there's so much to do. So my point is, how do we maximize this partnership by having a better cooperation and a better collaboration way, so we complement each other in a way to create the best results. This is really the other part of the challenge.
Yeah,
and when you look at the GAFSP model, which is a quite very useful, very relevant model for the development actors through the targeting. You can see that the targeting are also complementary. What they're doing, of course, IFAD work a lot with GAFSP, so it's complementing with IFAD, with IFC, with the World Bank, and through the private sector window, and etc. So, to be short, is a partnership at different levels that you have to look at it, and above all, how do we put cooperation and collaboration in a way to maximize the impact of such a partnership? Over to you, Femi.
Gilbert, those are big questions to be asking 10 years out of the end of SDG 2. Claudia, let me bring you in here, because it's really about how do you effectively make those partnerships work. It's something that your organization right now is really reviewing and looking at and planning ahead for the next decade. What can you share with us that isn't too confidential, that you feel that will help all of us do the same thing? Go ahead.
Very
Thanks so
clearly,
much, Femi.
I'm going to go to Claudia now, Gilbert. I'll come right back to you.
Thanks so much, Femi. Well, at the CGR right now, we are beginning a period of reform, which really builds exactly on the challenges that we're discussing here today. How to bring all of the different capacities, knowledge bases, physical assets, and access that we have together more effectively to make a difference and to work toward the 2030 goals. I think, everything Gilbert has said is so important about the scale of the task ahead of us and how much partnership is needed to address those challenges. Also, the nature of our work, I think, is really changing. The way we look at food systems now is not simply on farm. The connectivity that we see is extraordinary, and COVID has really highlighted a lot of the ways in which the global connectivity of our challenges are so complex. So at this point, the range of interdisciplinary work, the range of scientific expertise, the range of local contextual issues, of political economy, of hydroclimatic specificity in the ways that we work, all of those new areas of knowledge and science that need to be brought together are coming very much to the fore. So for example, with the CG in response to COVID, we have created a COVID response hub that brings together all of the capacities of the CG, but also partners directly with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So it's interesting to see the new partnerships that are arising to address these complex challenges. Within the CG specifically, we're entering a reform period. We're calling it One CG, where we're actually undergoing governance changes and structural changes within the CG to create a much more cohesive and we expect impactful and influential system, also one that can be a much better partner to all of you that we're speaking toward today, because we'll be organized in a way that helps diminish the transaction costs of partnership, which is something we may talk about here today, the complexity of working together over so many different topics
Claudia,
and so many different spaces.
Would you mind digging into that?
Thanks.
Because I think that's what people are listening to. They are thinking, this is hard, and then it's going to cost us money. I like the way you put it, though, transaction costs. That was really nicely put. What does that mean? Give us an example.
Simply finding the right partners in the right places with the right expertise is something that's very difficult. So in the CG, for example, we have historically been a network of most recently 15 different global centers that work on different commodity crops, on different hydroclimatic zones, on different natural resource spaces, water, forestry, fish, livestock, and different commodities. How do you find the right partner on the right topic to work in the right region? And creating One CG by creating a more cohesive group, sort of a front door, a one-stop shop, we hope that we can lower some of these transaction costs of finding the right partner in the right place to help get the jobs done.
What I am not hearing, and I would love to do this, is I'm not hearing on-the-ground examples. I'm hearing up here, because our panel are very important people. So I'm hearing up here, like the big issues here, the big challenges. I'm not actually hearing any examples of what's happening down on the ground. Agnes, can you help us with that?
Thank you, Femi. And so here I'm wearing my my hat as the president of AGRA, where we work with smallholder farmers. And unfortunately, Femi, when you look at the poverty levels we are talking about, smallholder farmers in the developing world are contributing significantly to poverty. So despite the land they are sitting on, despite the labor that they have in their hands, despite the opportunities, for example, in Africa for growing markets, and even if you say in Asia, South Asia, markets are growing, farmers are not benefiting from these opportunities. And I would say that there are three things that we have to look at that call for partnerships. These farmers need governments to work for them the most, need institutions to work for them the most. They live in places, unfortunately, they live in places where institutional capacity are some of the weakest in the world. These farmers need private sector to deliver services to them because they are underserved in many cases. Unfortunately, private sector is struggling to get to them because of some of the challenges that Claudia is talking about. How do you get good technologies to farmers somewhere, where road access is difficult? Where institutional capacity to deliver research outcomes is difficult. So that's another problem. But also we want, for these farmers, we want the development world to work, like Gilbert was talking about. But what we have on the ground today is these things are not working enough. So we need to double down if we are going to be able to serve these farmers and be able to come through on zero hunger. So what happens is these things need to come together in partnerships. There's no one institution out there, no one partner out there that is going to be able to deliver game-changing numbers within the poverty perspective that we are seeing today, within the zero hunger numbers we are seeing today. But we can do it together. When governments do work well, when research institutions, local research institutions do work well and have capability to take on the results coming from the CGIR, when private sector has the capacity to turn these opportunities into businesses, and when the whole landscape has the appropriate levels of funding. This is what I saw with GAFSP. When I was in Rwanda, we were one of the first countries that received the first GAFSP funding. And it unlocked, it was a $50 million project, but it unlocked $500 million worth of project from government itself, from other development partners, from other development institutions like IFAD, and really we designed a huge transformative program that had better capability to reach farmers with seed, to reach farmers with changing their land. In Rwanda, land is so many hills, and terracing the land was very important. Being able to do some of the programs on the ground that were very critical to changing farmers' lives, but also contributing to building a capital base for these farmers as you transition and take resources to them. You see them building the capital base, but you also see SMEs developing in these landscapes. And we've seen all these things happening through the partnerships we are seeing with on the ground. We are seeing farmers actually using agricultural productivity, increase the agricultural productivity to get out of poverty. So to be able to do this, there is no single institution that can do it. Again, we will need private sector to come together. We need research institutions to stay on top of what we need. We need governments to do their own investments, not just in funds, but in policies, in policy reforms, and in inclusion. Inclusion is probably one of the most important things that we don't think about a lot. So that would be my take here.
We have lost Ibrahima. We have lost him to the vagaries of the internet systems. I'm hoping that we'll be able to get him back into our conversation. That is why I'm not going to him next. All right, Claudia, in the spirit of collaboration and honesty and candor, ask one of your fellow panelists a pertinent question about transforming food systems, but collaboratively. Pick one, I was going to say, pick a victim, pick a volunteer. Claudia, ask them a pertinent question. Go ahead.
Oh dear. I would love to speak to Agnes and this extraordinary opportunity that you have, that we all have through the UN Food Systems Summit. My question really with the Food Systems Summit, it gives us such an important platform to raise the visibility of the breadth and the centrality of food systems to so many of the challenges that we're looking at today, not just hunger, but sustainability, climate adaptation, equity, inclusive growth. How is it that we can really very best use the Food Systems Summit to reach out and build partnerships and raise the momentum that we need to transform food systems? I'm personally very excited about the summit and would love to hear more about it from you.
So thank you. So that's an extremely important question. So the Food Systems Summit comes with a number of opportunities. Probably the most important opportunity is that it's a UN-led summit, meaning that it has the ability to draw in countries in new ways, in ways that we would usually, as individual partners, not be able to do. We would not be able to draw these countries in together. It has the ability to draw in all sorts of partnerships, but it also has huge reach in terms of the number of engagements you can do. And that's exactly what we are doing. We have now designed action tracks, which are going to be the places where you engage around what is going to be transformative. What does the world have to offer? So through action tracks, we will look at what the world has to offer with regards to game-changing ideas. And those game-changing ideas then get pressure tested, looked at for scaling capability, and then once approved as this is where we go, then we can talk, then you know that once you get something like that, you actually have global buy-in. So that's probably one of the most important things. Then we have the food systems dialogue. The food systems dialogue, which we are actually launching this week, we are launching global dialogues, is an opportunity for everybody to engage. So we are launching them at country level, and this presents an opportunity for countries to engage, recognizing fully well that food is a very local context. Food systems is a local context. We are impacting food systems locally, we are being impacted locally, and we need to look at the local context in which these things are happening and give people an opportunity to discuss what they are doing right and what they are doing wrong, but also what corrective actions they want to take in their food system. So that happens in the dialogues. But we also have the scientific group, which I hope, Claudia, you and the whole of the CGIR are part of, because the scientific group is looking at what opportunities, what is the evidence for where we are coming from? I mean, where are we coming from and what's the evidence for where we are going? What should we be taking forward? What do we need to take forward? What do we need to leave behind because it no longer makes sense? How we were producing food yesterday that doesn't make sense, that probably needs to be left behind. So there are all these things that are happening, but probably the two most important things of this summit that also links to what we are talking about today is the fact that it must engage nearly everybody. Changing our food system is going to have to be a personal decision as well. We make decisions 3 times a day to eat, and those decisions impact how we produce food, how food gets on our table. So it has to be a summit that has capacity to reach nearly everybody, and that's how we are designing it. But it also has to be a solution summit. You all in the CGIR are sitting with lots of solutions that we don't have visibility of, maybe we do. But so are other institutions that have so much that we can take forward that has already been tested and tried. How do we take that forward? How do we ensure that these solutions can actually happen? But we need resources. And that's why I love the conversation that is already happening here, that we actually think through how we are going to fund where we are going, because we are off track on SDGs, nearly all of them.
Gilbert is looking so thoughtful right now. He's sitting in his chair like this, thoughts rattling around in his brain. Gilbert, share one of them with us. What were you thinking about this whole idea, this journey to SDG, to can we do it together?
Yeah, I honestly believe that between now and 2030, we really need to keep a momentum very, very high. So the point that Claudia and Agnes were touching in terms of the opportunity of the Food System Summit is an important one. In addition to that, to be able to keep that momentum, you see, let's face it, the challenge we have is to be able to get, if I take ODA, for example, to get ODA start going up more than 5% of to agriculture. When IFAD was created in 1977, 15 to 20% of ODA were going to agriculture, and today barely 5%. So we really need to spread that out, which is one important thing for me. In addition, bringing the private sector, Agnes mentioned that, and not only bringing the private sector, by the way, just from a resource mobilization perspective, but bringing the private sector also from a knowledge sharing and making sure that when you talk about increasing the productivity on the ground, so to increase the income of the small-scale producers, we're going to need digital solutions where the private sector is going to be an important one. The other side is the soft side, where the Ceres presentation was quite very eloquent on that. To make sure that the small scale producers, they are better organized through the farmer organization, to ensure that the extension services are effective, and to ensure that they have a voice, a political voice, is going to be crucial. this is almost a sine qua non condition for the inclusion that we're talking about. And the COVID current situation, what is demonstrating on the ground, you were referring to a concrete example on the ground. What is demonstrating is that lack of that inclusion or lack thereof is causing even much more problem and accelerating, pushing people back to extreme poverty. You may want to remember also the presentation made by FAO, by Torero, where we talk about the inequalities within countries. So all of those are different type of challenges. On one hand, I hope that we will be able to get the solution or some of the solution through the Food System Summit. But it is also important that, and this will be my last point to answer your question, it's going to be important to ensure that each sector or each institution, where is or are the comparative advantages, and those comparative advantages kind of are very much aligned and together, back to my first point, maximizing the impact. For example, if we take GAFSP trying to target not only the public window, but the private sector window, trying to target the low-income country on the grant-based business. You have IFAD that will mix a concessional loan approach with a reflow coming back and increasing what you could do later on. But that complements very well with GAFSP. Then you can see the World Bank with a huge infrastructure project which can complement the tertiary level of local investment that IFAD will be doing, etc., etc. If you take the research world, is the same. I like the word used by Agnes, or almost as telling Claudio that a lot of what the CGI are doing is not always very well known. For example, and how do we make that better known and apply it, we that are on the ground, and making sure that we can put that to the benefit of the smallholders. So that complementarity, I think, is going to also be crucial in addition to the resource dimension. Over.
Thank you, audience, for watching and staying with our conversation. We're looking at partnership to transform food systems, global food systems. The aim of that is to get to SDG 2, zero hunger by 2030. Questions, your questions for the panel. Okay, impressive presentation, thank you. Will COVID-19 serve as an opportunity to make the global food system better than before? Claudia, you start, then Agnes, and then Gilbert. Could COVID-19 improve food systems, Claudia?
It's a great question. And I think the answer lies with our response. I think that this is, COVID is a wonderful wake-up call. It's a terrible tragedy, but it's an important wake-up call. And it's interesting this week, as you all know, and a huge congratulations to our colleagues at the World Food Program. The World Food Program won the Nobel Peace Prize this year. 50 years ago, Norman Borlaug won the World Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, for his work on combating hunger and starvation. It's both exciting and also perhaps a little bit heartbreaking that food remains so fundamental, a link in the armor toward peace and stability, right? And we see whenever there are these disruptions, whether these are pandemic, whether it's fragility in a society, whether it's war, migration, and the shocks that we'll be seeing and we are seeing from climate change, that a lot of the fabric that holds us together is food systems. This is absolutely fundamental. So what I'm hoping is that in the learning moment that COVID affords us, there will be a renewed recognition, and I think we're seeing this, of the fundamental the centrality of food systems to development, to peace, to inclusive growth, to environmental sustainability, and to our resilience and also the mitigation of climate change. So I do think that this is a moment in which we can use the attention that is being focused on a global tragedy toward building back better and really improving our food systems, getting more from them than we ever have. Thank you.
Agnes, what's your take? COVID-19 impact on food systems?
Okay, so COVID-19 is going to have a huge impact on food systems. You had Maximo saying we'll have 132 million people going hungry in addition to the existing number of people that were already hungry. So huge impact. But I think what it has done, what it shows all of us is, and it comes through many of these studies, there's cost to inaction, and probably sometimes even bigger than action, and we have to think about it. When resilience is busy wearing down for communities, and communities get pushed out of their capabilities and get forced to do stuff that they probably wouldn't usually do. When we encroach on systems and we know what needs to be done and we don't do it, definitely all these things have a cost. So I'm hoping that we do understand that we can avoid some of these costs by ensuring that we are working on the world on reducing vulnerability, on strengthening resilience of communities that really find themselves in challenging environments, but also on reducing hunger, on putting all of us to a trajectory of prosperity. And this is a shared goal, and this is a shared value. It's already embedded in our SDGs. So we need to do that. So to me, as we go into the Food Systems Summit, we must ask ourselves, what is it that we need to be doing? Because sometimes the cost of inaction can be extremely high.
Gilbert, I'm going to give you a different question. Thank you to our audience who are engaging with us today. Gilbert, here's the question. Food crises are on the rise. Is the international community spending or doing enough in response? I wonder if that's a hypothetical question. Gilbert, you take that one.
Could you please repeat the question? The line was breaking a bit, please.
Food crises are on the rise. Is the international community spending and doing enough in response?
Clearly, if the crisis is still there, that means we're not doing enough. That's, for me, the question is quite very simple. Are we doing enough with the means we have today? Yes. Can we do more? Yes. So in as much as the crisis will remain there, that means we're not doing enough. However, it's important, you see, it's important to not forget one dimension. I believe Claudia was referring to the next year's 50 years ago Nobel Prize, and now one of the common points between that is called peace. When you think about it, and when I want to refer back to the presentation made by FAO, by Torero from FAO, where it was giving some of the underlying causes and conflict. Climate change, economic downturn are important drivers for that. So my point is that the development actors that are involved in food or SDG 2, we can increase what we're doing. If globally, the global community is not also working on addressing and the root causes of those climate change and crisis and so forth, the problem can only be growing. So it's important to keep in mind that we have to do more, quite frankly, but we also have to make sure as international community, as a global community, that we also address the other underlying causes of the puzzle. So in other words, when we spend billion to fight crisis, we spend billion for humanitarian relief operations, but we don't spend that much in investments for the development to avert or prevent those crises. And this is one of the things that has to also change. And that is a point that I keep advocating for. We need to keep in mind that it's much more cheaper to invest in peace prevention, in increasing productivity, than it is to address the crisis or the exclusion challenge we have when those issues are not addressed earlier in the game. Over.
Panel, we have 5 more minutes together, so I am going to be sharing the questions with you. I want a brief answer in response so we can get in as many as possible because our audience is sitting there waiting for their questions to be answered. All right, Claudia, I'm going to get this one to you and a brief answer, please. Achieving food security sustainably within planetary boundaries is critical now more than ever. Is it within reach?
I think the clear answer is it must be, and I do believe that it is. I think there are extraordinary advances that are being made simply by looking differently at the way that we manage our food systems. Really exciting discussions going on around agroecology, around nature-positive production, and it seems that when we set our mind to it, we find ways of doing things better. And I think this is part of what I think is quite fundamental to the way that we're looking at food systems today, which is that we're asking more from our food systems, right? Not just hunger, but nutrition. Not just production, but sustainable production and nature-positive production, and creating mixed food systems that help to balance the ecology and sustain our land and water systems, protect our virgin forests, and use nature in more constructive ways. So I'm optimistic that this is an area that we will be able to do much more in. Thanks.
Agnes, I'm going to give this question to you. How can agriculture play a role in addressing climate change challenges?
Thank you, Femi. So what we see today is agriculture from a production perspective does contribute to climate change, does contribute to emissions. From a waste perspective, resulting from agricultural production, we do contribute probably 80% of all agricultural output, but not necessarily at the production level along the value chain. So there's a lot that is happening that is contributing to climate change. And that's probably the most important part of looking at nature-positive production. We need to think about, much as we've figured out new ways of producing food, which are those ways of producing food that are not in sync with what our planet needs. We need to identify those, and part of the solution to our problems would be to be able to find those challenges and remove them. But there are also ways we know of producing food that are more in line with where we are going, that are more in line with our planetary boundaries, and those areas of those ways of producing food that are in line, that reduce emissions, that reduce waste pollution,
Right.
that reduce pollution of our oceans, of our land, but also reduce the amount of land that is in agriculture unnecessarily, while looking at ways of intensifying production and productivity in very constructive ways that are sustainable for our environment.
Okay.
Someone was saying that we have a continent, an area as big as South America, the land that is degraded from agriculture is as big as South America. That's a huge opportunity in terms of recovering it, because it's even lost to agriculture. It's not being used anymore. We can stop doing more of that. We can rehabilitate what has been wasted, and we can intensify production in productive ways for our environment and in sync with our environment. That's embedded in some of the action tracks that we'll be taking forward as we look at nature-positive production in the Food Systems Summit.
We are partnering to transform food systems globally. It is a GAFSP replenishment event. Thank you for watching. Thank you for those excellent questions. In the spirit of partnership, I'm going to share the last question amongst our 3 panelists. And you only have a line, panel, okay? Because we're doing this together. What are the top 3 things that need to happen in order to make SDG 2 happen? 1 thing from Gilbert, or 1 from Agnes, 1 from Claudia. Gilbert.
Doubling the impact of what we're doing now. Over.
Oh, it's so efficient. I love that. If Gilbert's in charge of SDG 2, we're doing it. We're doing it. It's so efficient. Great answer. Agnes, go ahead. One thing that's needed for SDG 2. Actually, it was 3 things, but I'm sharing it amongst the panelists. Agnes, go ahead. We have lost Agnes. Agnes, no, she's here.
No,
She's
no,
here.
I'm
She's
here.
here. All right, Agnes, stop stalling. Go for it.
Yeah. So we need partnerships with the government, with private sector, with donors. We need to partner
Staying on
for reducing
message. Fantastic. Agnes, Claudia, the question was name 3 things. What are the 3 things we need to do to make SDG 2 happen? I'm sharing amongst all of the panel. Your response is what? What's your one thing? Go ahead.
My one thing is to innovate based on science and partnership, and try to do things differently, try to do things in a way that reach the range of goals that we now have for our food systems, and everything that SDG 2 both implies within it and needs to provide for the other SDGs as well.
I
Thanks.
want to see our magnificent panel. Put all of the panel up so you can see them all together. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you, Agnes, as well. Coming to us via Zoom. It worked. And I have to say, it's such a shame that we saw Ibrahim at the very beginning, and he did a fine introduction. He represented farmers. His spirit was with us, but his connection was not. Panel, we appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. So
Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're
Thank you.
very welcome. You're very welcome. It was great to have you. So the first part of our program was really about setting up the challenge to get to SDG 2, the crisis that we have with our food systems, and how collaboration, partnership, how that may well help. Some solutions there, practical solutions. The second part, as this is a GAFSP replenishment event, is talking about GAFSP, the work that they have done, their stakeholders, their collaborators, their partners. Let's get going with the World Bank.